Right, this is the Budget Committee. This is Thursday, June 4, 2015. We're at 6 p.m.
Clerk will call
I
the
have
roll.
Counsel Capone.
Here.
I have Counsel Delasola.
Here.
I have Counsel DeFleury. I have Counsel Hill.
Here.
I have Counsel Manning.
Here.
I have Counsel Marquez.
Here.
I have Counsel McKinney.
Here.
I have Counsel Napolitano. Here. I have Counsel Sajada.
Here.
I have Counsel Sahani. Here. And I have Counsel Simonelli. Not here. We have 10 members present. We do have a quorum.
10 members present. We have a quorum. Please rise to salute the flag. Okay, before we start, you can see you have a whole bunch of paper. Thank you, Melissa, for getting all of this to us. So I know you need bigger desks now. But the first department in front of us is libraries with Deb Abraham. I believe it is in page 75 and 76 of the book. Anyone from the administration that's going to come present, and Deborah, if you could come forward. And again, Council, I believe it's pages 75 and 76, so we'll go to page 75. Okay. Deborah, if you could please just identify yourself for the record. Melissa, also, if you could please identify yourself for the record, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Deborah Abraham, Director of the Libraries in Everett.
Melissa Rodriguez, Mayor Di Maria's Chief of Staff.
Oh, and one thing, I've got Council Manning, but before you hit the floor, I just want to disclose that my wife is a friend of the libraries and a trustee. I don't think I have a conflict. It's not a paid position, but I just wanted to put it out there before we started. Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Abraham, just on the equipment on the first page, 75, I don't know what it, you have the same thing as us, but equipment repair and maintenance is going up significantly for next year requested. Could you just explain that? I'm sorry, under the expenses, because it's one Powell Library and then there's expenses. It's under expenses. Okay, and just curious, about how many computers will this get us at that library? Oh, great. Okay, thank you very much.
Council McKinnon.
It's not actually computers, it's what they call a zero client system. So each person that comes to use a computer would have their mouse, keyboard, and monitor, but instead of using the CPU under the desk, it all goes to a server. So 2 servers, one for the adult department and one for the children's department, would have, all the action would happen on the server. The advantage of this is when you need to upgrade anything, you only need to do it twice, not 15 times. It's working well at the Shute Library, and a number of libraries in the state are moving toward the zero client system. So this is a good opportunity. We did it at the Shute because it was a small unit. We could give it a try. Now we think we should move it in with the Parlin because the computers there are getting awfully slow for the purposes that people want to put them. You're welcome.
Council McKinnon.
Just a quick question, couple of questions. The books, magazines, and papers, it's 36, 811, 43, and FY15, and it's recommended that it go up to 60,000. Can you just explain that?
It was 60,000 this year as well. So
Okay.
that's not a change.
All right, so it was 60,000, but you only utilized 36.
Well, those are older figures. They're not quite up to date.
date,
You
okay.
see, publishing tends to go in the spring and the fall. And so the spring numbers are not really in there, because
Yeah,
it takes
I
a
just-
while to get the
I
invoices.
just wanted to,
Yes, of course.
okay. Thank you. And then, let me see, you also have books, magazines, newspapers, down below that?
For the shoe library,
So
yes.
So that would be the shoot
Mhm.
coming on? Okay.
And it's all been level funded.
Yeah,
Hmm?
and then another, whatever, 16 for non-print media?
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
That
then
would include,
there was a zeroed-out figure, professional development, up to 700. What's that for?
that's for the staff to attend workshops and meetings. This year, we didn't do quite as much of that because of the shoot reopening and
So they'll be going now.
so, yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you.
Council Del Sola.
Good evening. I just want to thank you for 77,000 you're turning back, you're giving back to us.
Well,
To the city.
that was unexpected in that we had a retirement and one of our staff members did pass away in February. So of course, those two salaries became available, and that's why we have given
And-
quite as much back as we are.
And they are being replaced, or they were replaced?
Yes, well, one of the positions, there was a lateral transfer, so when you have a lateral transfer, you still have a hole, it just
Correct.
moves. And then the other, we're just about to fill that vacancy. And then the children's librarian, we haven't started our search yet, but we needed a little time for things to, allow people to grieve and settle out.
Okay, thank you.
Council Marquez.
Hi, Mr. Abrams, on your part-time help, how long was the library closed down up on Shute Street?
About a year and a half.
And did we maintain all the part-time help? Do we need part-time help
Well,
at the one library also?
we do use part-time help at both places. When we closed, a number of people did move on, especially a couple of students, and so we didn't replace those positions last year, but now we have hired people for those spots to help us with the work at the Shute Library.
Okay, because I just saw that the money expended for the budget, it was $208,000 for 2015, and expended was $179 as just went to printing, so we used the same amount of part-time salary, even though we only had one library.
Well, with the two full-time positions vacant, we used more part-time help to help us out with those spaces. We had a retirement and we had a death, so
All right, thank you.
we put on more part-time help in those areas than we usually would.
All right, thank you.
Council McKinnon.
Are we gonna maintain that part-time help, or
Yes.
okay, so
Yeah.
you're gonna just keep?
It's a little switched in that, we'll be spending more on the part-time help in the positions, for instance, at the Shute Library, and a little less for librarian help at the Parlin Library, because that position will be filled
Okay,
next year.
So you're gonna hire another position coming in, and then
Yeah.
keep the part-time help at status
Mhm.
quo, the same staffing levels? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 75? Seeing none, we'll go to 76. Any questions on page 76? There are no questions? Okay. Deb, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
The
for
next
opportunity.
department is Human Resources. That's on page, the first page is 17. So go to page 17 in the book. Hi, Kevin, how are you? If you could please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Council. Kevin O'Donnell, Director of Human Resources.
Okay. Counselor DeFlorio, we're on page 17, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I actually have a general question for the part-timers. All the part-timers that work 20 hours, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not off track,
No,
but the
if-
reason
if
why I
it's a
want to ask
budget
this
question,
question.
sure.
Yeah, I don't want to ask it in a certain department, because I'm not attacking anybody.
Okay.
So I figured with his human resource, it would be the right time to ask it. Anybody that works part-time 20 hours, are they getting health benefits?
The union people, yes.
Okay, so all the 20 hours, all the people that are working 20 hours are getting health benefits.
Yes.
Anyone who works more than 19 and a half hours is eligible for benefits. Whether they take them or not, they may have benefits elsewhere, they may not. take them.
That's what I meant,
But
they're
anyone who
eligible,
has
I'm
worked
sorry,
more than
yeah.
19 and a half hours is eligible for benefits from the city of Everett.
Okay,
That's what you're
thank you.
Counselor Delasola.
On the overtime, last year had 4,300. There's nothing at all for this year? It's zeroed out? Is there a reason for that?
Yes, we had changed one person, Cheryl DeAndrea, to, we adjusted her salary, and there's no clause for overtime now with me being back on board, and we have another person as well, another staffer. So.
Okay, another question, employee buyback. So it'll zero it out for 2014 and 15, and then 2016, there's 100,000.
Yes,
Oh, stop doing it. Thanks.
Oh, you're asking for 100, but the mayor's only recommended 50.
I can answer that. I don't know why this mic's so echoey. Let me use that one. Hold on.
It's all about sharing.
All right. What happened was, you'll see that we had a transfer in the, for free cash for employee buyback that we submitted today for Monday's meeting. We had created an employee stabilization buyback fund in 2014, and we funded it with $200,000. We zeroed out the appropriation. But what I didn't realize is that there are employee buybacks for active employees who have perfect attendance and they're maxed out on their sick time. There's provisions in the collective bargaining agreements for some of those employees to receive rewards. So we want to start in 16 with using the employee stabilization buyback account for those who retire, but the active employees who are rewarded for perfect attendance and such will be paid for within the operating budget. We moved that line up to a salary line because it is a salary item. So you see, we shifted it up to the personnel portion of the budget. We started with 100,000, but we did some analysis, and we think we can get by with 50,000 for the active employees, and we will continue to fund the stabilization buyback for those who retire. But this year, we really, with the turnover in HR, we kind of lost track of what we were going to try to establish in 15. That money's still there, but instead of accessing that money to the employees for the buyback, I just requested free cash to zero this deficit out for 15, and we'll start fresh with 16 for funding actives through the operating budget and funding retirees through the stabilization account.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Napolitano.
Thank you. Regarding the summer jobs, is that the summer youth program? Okay, what is the criteria to qualify to be picked up under the summer youth program?
Everett resident between the ages of 17 and 21.
Okay. Any other requirements, like requirement for a driver's license or anything like that?
No.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Marchese.
Regarding Councilor DeFlorio's question regarding the part-time workers, so you're saying anybody with 19 and a half hours could get entitled to health benefits?
That's Massachusetts general law, that anyone who works 19 and a half hours in the state can be eligible for health benefits.
So you could work,
I'm sorry, it's 20 here, not 19.
all right, so you could work 20 hours and you could get a family plan, which would probably be equal to
Under
what
state-
you're getting for a salary.
Yes, under the law, if someone works 20 hours anywhere, they're
So
eligible.
why, don't you think it'd be more fiscal responsibility to make it 19 and make it a true part-time job? I don't understand if you're gonna pay someone 20 hours, why don't you get two people, make one full-time person, then have two people getting,
The unions don't necessarily like when you start splitting jobs to avoid benefits. I mean, I I like the philosophy myself to save money, but if you need a full-time person and you say, oh, we're just gonna split it and pay part-time or part-time, it becomes a union issue, believe it or not.
It really doesn't make much sense, though, to offer full benefit package to someone working a part-time week. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Either it's union or non-union. I'm sure we have people who aren't in the union getting the same thing in the city. But it's staggering. Thank you.
Counsel Sani.
Thank you. On the summer jobs, did we have any donations also to increase besides 50,000?
Yes, we do. We also get a grant from the Youth Works program out of Metro North. So we utilize those monies.
Okay. Do we have a total of roughly what we're receiving for that? Or?
Well, we haven't started receiving the private donations as of yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Counsel Hanlon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, our auditor, just a clarification, if I could, on the employee buyback. That's for current employees that have perfect attendance to get that this year, or do they have to wait until they're retired?
I believe the firefighters have it, if they have perfect attendance for, I believe, a 3 or 6 month stretch, they don't use any sick time, they're entitled to $750 bonus for that. So it was something that must have been bargained in before my time, but
Okay.
again, when I looked at the employee leave buyback, I was assuming we were talking just retirees and people who left, but we do have some instances in collective bargaining agreements that there are rewards for perfect attendance, and that's what we've reestablished in the budget for 16.
Okay. So this is all for perfect attendance, this 50,000?
And I think there are, in the laborer's contract, if you maxed out on your sick time, you can't accrue anymore, so you get a buyback credit for some of that time that you can't accrue anymore as well.
Okay.
Any other questions on page 17? Seeing none, we'll move to page 18. Any questions on page 18? Counsel Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. O'Donnell, can you just explain the, needing the extra position, human resources generalist? There was nothing there, and now there's a funded $46,000 position.
Yes, so we just have, part of the duties are always expanding in human resources, and we have a need there because our benefits specialist is a part-timer. She only works 18 hours a week, so the work was just, the volume of work necessitated just an extra person there.
Would it be possible, I know in the past, I'm not sure if it was Mayor Hanlon or Mayor De Maria, Melissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that getting somebody that maybe could work in 2 different departments. Basically, if there was an overload of work in your department, somebody that maybe could spend like 20 hours a week in your office, and then somebody could work 20 hours a week, say, doing the auditor's office or wherever, something like that. I know in the past we've done that. Would that be considerable here, or?
Well, I think Kevin's been very lucky to find somebody for this position already who has a lot of skills in human resources. The problem is that when you only had the retiree there alone, if someone came to the office on a day when the retiree wasn't there, when the part-time person wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to apply for your health insurance. And so you had people, new employees, or during open enrollment issues that Kevin can attest to more. So I think that there's a real need in that department for a full-time person.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 18? Before we move to the next page, I do have one. Kevin, without giving away numbers, the very first listed one, that's your position, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Now, is that the number that you came in at, or is it lower than that? And if so, by how much?
Are you speaking to of the far right column,
Yes.
Counsel? Yes, that's what I came in at.
That's what you were hired at?
Yes.
Okay. I have no other questions on that page. Everyone's good on that page? We'll move to page 86. 86. Are there any questions on page 86? Counsel Mangan.
Thank you. Melissa, whoever can answer this, I'm just curious, for the health insurance, they requested 19 million, but the mayor recommended 18,900,000.
I think you might be on 87, yeah.
Page 86.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. No, mine's the 87.
Okay, Counsel, you good, Counsel? Counsel DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This unemployment benefits, does this also include the schools? It does. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on 86? We'll move to 87. Any questions on 87? Counsel Mangan.
Same question. There's a difference of $100,000, and, I mean, we're talking 19 million, but
Yeah, every year, we get our enrollment in health insurance, and then we have to assume how many new employees we would have. Teacher's side mostly inflates due to enrollment increasing. So initially, we had assumed a few more positions, and then after looking at the enrollment trends, we felt that we can lower it down 100,000 because they're not trending as strong as they were with the enrollment at the school. So we believe that the teachers hired fiscal year 16 won't be as many as we had in the past. So we've hedged it down a little. Some of that is, best guesstimate here on how many new employees we'll need to have and how many of those will take individual plans or family plans or no plans at all. But we do also have some initiatives in our collective bargaining to try to have people move off our health insurance and keep that number low. So we are trying to manage that and trying to reflect some savings there. We've had pretty good luck keeping our rates stable, but just the number of head counts there, we're trying to manage and assume how many we're going to have for 16. So we thought we could hedge it back a little bit, Counsel.
okay. And the other thing was on the dental insurance, the department requested 20,000, the mayor said nothing. I mean, what would 20,000, Melissa, who would that actually cover? Because it doesn't seem like a lot. But
Right, so currently we don't have any employer contribution for dental insurance. The employee pays full. The mayor had contemplated offering some type of dental plan to employees. We decided that we couldn't afford it at this point, so we're going to continue on.
thank you.
Counsel McKinnon.
Just a quick question. Would this, the night on the same subject as Councilman Mangan, would the 19 million, would that include the 9.5s or the 20-hour workers?
It includes anyone who takes health insurance, and 20-hour week or more are entitled to health insurance. So basically, health insurance kicks in as a matter of if you're part of the pension plan. So if you work 20 hours, you're required to be into the pension. If you're in the pension plan, then you have to have health insurance benefits, so.
Just as a general overview of that, is there a number of those people that are coming in part-time that are getting benefits? Is that why there's an increase?
I don't think that there's but a handful of people that work under the full complement of hours that have benefits. We have a couple of clerks. I think we may have a few other special circumstances with parking enforcement and such, but I'd say 98% of the people are working full complement. There are cases where, I understand Councilman Marchese's point, 19 and a half hours, no benefits, no pension, but sometimes it's a matter of having a person who's reliable and steady, and quite honestly, yeah, they're working for the benefits, so it's kind of a balancing act, but there's only about a handful of that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Counsel Hanlon.
Thank you again to Auditor Mr. Tassay. I'm looking at the AD&D insurance, and that's $18,000. That seems kind of reasonable. I'm wondering, how many people are covered by that?
Oh, Counsel, I have to get back to you on that one. I don't have the,
Okay.
And that's a pretty modest AD&D insurance. I think it's only for the first $5,000 or $10,000 that we pay in the city, and it's some kind of split. So it's only I think it's less than $10 a month per the people that are employed in the city. But I can get you those figures. I don't have
What
them.
would it cover?
I think it's a $10,000.
No, I mean, in an amount, you mean $10,000 max per person? If that was,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of life insurance. The AD&D, yeah, no, I know what it stands for. I just, I was looking at the wrong line. I'll have to get back to you on that
Okay.
exactly. I'm sorry.
okay.
Any other questions on page 87? Seeing none, we'll go to page 88. Any questions on page 88? Seeing none, we'll go to page 89. Any questions on page 89? Seeing none?
Excuse with the customary thanks.
Thank you very much. The next department is City Solicitor's Office. And that is page 15 and 16. Hi, Colleen, how are you? If you could please just introduce yourself for the record.
Colleen Mejia, City Solicitor.
We are on page 15. Any questions on page 15? Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at the salaries. I'm assuming you're going to be looking at filling the vacancy for the assistant city solicitor?
Absolutely.
Okay. And we anticipate when were you looking at, has it already gone out to search, or?
No, it hasn't not been posted yet.
All right, thank you.
Councilor McKinnon.
ISD litigations. There's 10,500 requests, and we only utilize 4,981.
I think that was as the day it was printed. I think that we've used more than that. We've probably exhausted the entire line item.
Okay, so that's, these numbers right here are,
Reflect the day it went out to print.
thank you.
Councilor Marchese.
My question was answered, I'm sorry, thank you.
Any other questions on 15? We'll move to page 16. Any questions on page 16? Councilor Hanlon.
Through you to our solicitor. I'm looking at the paralegal. I'm looking at the note. It says these positions received a reclassification due to the salary study that they had. And this one actually went down. Was that reclassified down in salary, or was it because of some other reason?
Actually, last year's salary was 40,000, and the mayor is requesting 43, so there was an increase. The reason why it's reclassified is because the position went from legal assistant to paralegal.
Oh, okay, so those two lines are swaps?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Any other questions on page 16? Councilor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So you're not going to have a legal assistant anymore? You're going to a paralegal?
The position will just be called paralegal instead of legal assistant.
But it's a non-union?
Correct.
So it's going to become non-union, because
It's
before it was a
always-
union position, is that correct?
No, my office is exempt. It's confidential.
I thought so,
Yeah.
okay. So, okay, I understand. Thank
Any
you.
other questions on 16? Seeing none, we'll excuse customary thanks. Thank you, Colleen. The next department is gaming and accountability.
What about insurance, no?
It is on page 80 and 81. Go to page 80. Dave, how are you? If you could please just identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Dave Rodriguez.
And we are on page 80. Any questions on page 80? If there are none, we will go to page 81. Any questions on page 81? Councilor McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Rodriguez. These two salaries right here, that's going to be the director's salary and then this office manager's salary, and those were already approved, and that's what was put in for under the gaming when we approved it, correct?
Yep, just
Thank-
last week, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I just
sir.
wanted to
Yeah.
state that.
It's like deja vu. right?
Yep, it's coming back before.
Back around, it's great.
All right, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 81? Councilor Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to Mr. Rodriguez. What's gonna happen when the development is all done with this job? Is this job gonna be continued?
It's the anticipation this office will no longer exist.
It
Won't
won't.
have to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Hanlon.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, through you, to our, what's your title now? Gaming Commissioner? What is it?
Until the actual appointment comes to
Yeah,
the
well-
council, it'll be the Director of Gaming Accountability and Development.
Okay, that wasn't my question, but I just thought of it. I know where the money's coming from this, now supposing you go over in your budget, that has nothing to do with who's gonna give it back to you, right? You can just, if you go over, I was looking at your travel for $1,500. Let's say it goes to $4,500. That's still recoverable, right?
Yeah, as long as it's generally, those things have to, if there's any additional ask, it needs to be pre-approved
Mhm.
with the person, with the entity that's gonna be reimbursing.
Thank you.
We're certainly not anticipating going over, do our best.
Any other questions on 81? Before we do, I just have a couple of quick questions. I know you've got your ear to the ground better than all of us, so you're the right person to have here to ask. Obviously, we're seeing all kinds of stuff in the paper. We're seeing City of Boston chiming in. I'm sure the City of Revere is going to chime in. Somerville's going to chime in. By the nature of our profession, we know this could go on for a while. What does this mean, in your opinion, as far as what's going on? And with regards to this position, what is there for you to be able to do if that whole thing is tied up for a while?
We're not proceeding as though it will get tied up. We're still moving ahead full steam, as is the developer. There's a lot to do pre-development before any shovel gets in the ground. So we're not taking that into account. We don't anticipate that becoming a factor. We don't think these lawsuits have any merit. Part of the office and I, along with our outside counsel, are keeping a very close eye on the lawsuits. And we don't think that it's going to be a factor at all.
I've seen the job description, different things. What are the types of things that you'll be doing in the interim? Let's say while there is a pin in it, what are the types of activities that your office will be doing?
I'm sorry, while there's a what?
While there's a pin in going forward with the project, what are the types of things that your office would be doing?
There isn't a pin in the project. Yeah, the developer's proceeding full steam as though there isn't one.
So there's still
Yep.
stuff for you to do, and you're going to stay on
Always,
top of it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, believe me, yeah.
Good. Okay. Any other questions in 81? Seeing none, with excuse customary thanks. Thank you very much for the information, Dave. The next department is Planning and Development and Redevelopment Authority, and that's with Tony Souza. We are on pages 66 and 67. Tony, if you could please just identify yourself for the record. And we are on page 66. Councilor Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tony, the professional services, you had requested, I know this year we haven't spent, well, maybe spent everything, but maybe this is just outdated, but you had requested, well, the department requested $440,000. The mayor recommended $100,000. That's a big difference. Can you explain that?
For the question, sorry. Thank you for the question. The request that was placed in there was approximately $300,000 to do a master plan, in addition to the other expenses relative to professional services. And as a matter of fact, if I'm correct, maybe at the last regular council meeting, there was a request of that $300,000 via free cash, and that was referred to the committee on the whole, which at that time I'll give a more detailed presentation. But in essence, the master plan, it's long overdue. We're working with the master plan from 1965. I don't need to tell you, things have certainly changed. And the amount of investment we've done in planning, and from our master plan in the Lower Broadway, the Commercial Triangle master plan, and so on, it's important that we solidify all those plans together. And like I said, it's long overdue, and I'll have a more detailed presentation. Okay. So I did put a request in there for $300,000, and it was taken out, certainly, more appropriately through another vehicle. So look forward to present that to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on page 66? Seeing none, we'll go to page 67. Any questions on page 67? Councilor Sani.
Can you explain the increase on the senior planner? Is that on a study that where it jumped up so high, or?
We had created how the organization should look, and the senior planner is pretty much the third in charge in that department, so these salaries were, we've had some savings in the city planner position, and we want to backfill the senior planner with a qualified person, and that's the salary that it would call for to get that structure in there. So that's the, kind of took some of the savings from the executive city planner, and we put it towards the senior planner to create the structure of the department that we'd like to see going forward.
Is every position filled in that department now, or are they still looking?
No, the executive city planner position is posted, and we're going to be beginning interviews, as well as Mr. Souza's next week.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 7? Council Marquez.
67? Yes, they had a environmental planner, says he, wait, I'm missing something, excuse me. Deputy Director.
Yes.
He's making 14,000 a year, working 35 hours.
The, with respect to the deputy director, and you'll see a footnote, there's actually 5 footnotes there to this budget.
Yep.
But specific to the deputy director, you see in the FY16 department request 14,788. The remaining is supplemented through the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant.
Was that supplemented to that money that's down there?
Yeah, basically, the split would be 20% is funded through the general fund and 80% is funded through the Community Development Block Grant. And that's the case. There's the splits in the FTE, that percentage, the decimal is, reflects how it's split up between those particular positions.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on this page? If there are none, I have one quick one.
Yes.
And, I know, oh, Council Hanlon.
I was looking at the granting figures. Are these all from one grant or similar grants, or there are different grants that you can gather?
Sure. Thank you for that question. The grant source is through our mini entitlement community development block grant funding. It's consistent with the most recent prior years. So it is from, to answer your question, it is from one grant source.
One grant source. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I just have one quick one from the chair. It's the administrative assistant with the footnote 5.
Yes.
I'm looking at the appropriation from fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 16. I realize it looks like it's a union position.
Sure.
It looks like the math in fiscal year 15 was about 31,000 or so, and then, if I'm doing it right. And then fiscal year 16 looks like it moved up to 50,800. It's a pretty big
Sure.
jump. Could you explain why?
Yeah, there was a vacancy in that position this year, and while it was vacant, we actually did some changes to the job description and reclassified it from a C6 to an A6, and that's the difference that you're seeing there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll excuse Councilor. Thanks. Tony, thank you.
Thank you.
Council McKinnon, could you take the chair? Because I got to go in the hot seat. Thank you.
Are we inviting up the,
Can we,
Can we invite the
President
president
of
of
Council.
council?
sir.
Frank Capone, Council President. Wow, what an intimidating looking group.
excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
This would be page number 1, and Councilwoman Rosa DeFlorio.
We have about $40,000 going back.
In regards to that 40,000 going back, Mr. Chairman, I know it's not your fault, but we are very uncomfortable here, and we can't think. I need a bigger desk. People can't hear us on the mic, so I believe this is the only department that we can add in. Is that correct?
I don't think we can add.
That's incorrect.
All right. However, your comfort is my number one concern. So I want you to make sure that you're aware of that.
Thank you. So I would recommend that you put it in the budget next year to correct this disaster. Thank you.
Okay. She is cold. Love to get a shawl.
$40. Oh, it's that expensive
Is
now.
there's still time to use that 40, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Are we turning that back?
Absolutely.
A memo went out that all purchase orders have to be in by Monday, so you got until Monday.
It's going to be a heck of a weekend.
Gotta move quick.
What's your pleasure on this? Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Page-
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
I'm sorry,
Mr.
before we go
Hanlon?
there. To our council president, you know what our staff is. Have you ever contemplated putting an addition onto that staff for someone that would do research work for us?
That would be up to the body to determine what they wanted to do with that.
Okay.
It's something we could put forward next fiscal
Did
year.
we have a meeting? Did we have a meeting?
I don't recall.
Oh,
I don't think so.
okay, all
But-
right. All right, maybe, because we're doing, maybe next year, well, whoever's going to be the president, we could do that. We could go over the budget and see what everybody wants, and then the president could put that on or not put it on. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 1? Seeing none, page 2. Any questions on page 2? Seeing none? Councilwoman Rosa DeFlorio.
I see that there's been increases, cost of living increases, like 2% on some people. I don't see anything on the clerk of committees. Does that have, the clerk of committees doesn't automatically get a 2% increase? We have to vote on that? Is
Yeah,
that
I
correct?
believe that's salary set by the council.
It is
I don't
set by
think there's
council,
no
okay.
automatic increase.
So maybe we should do something where he gets the cost of living increase, like the administrative assistants. Thank you. All of us.
Is there any other questions on page 2? Seeing none? Excuse customary thanks.
Thank you. Okay, what is the pleasure of the council? Councilor DeFlorio.
Actually, I don't know if this is protocol, but I would like to make a comment. I mean, obviously, I believe that if we're gonna do any cuts, they should be done this evening, because Monday night at a regular council meeting, it's kind of difficult. You have got a public hearing, then you have a regular council meeting, and you can't be making cuts at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, because at that point, we're all too tired, and, you know, it's still early today if anybody decides to make any cuts. But I also would like to speak to the mayor where he's up there, and my recommendation is, I know we did a salary study, okay? Obviously, I know about the salary study because I was the one that brought it up, whether it was the mayor's increase and also the city clerk. Obviously, your increase didn't go through, but that's neither here nor there. As far as the salary increases, some of them are very high, and I understand bringing people up to the whatever salaries they should get. My recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and I hope you would agree to something like this, is maybe divide it in 3 years. You know, do like, say, if it's a $15,000 raise, do 5, 5, and 5. Because I believe it's just all too much at one time. That's my opinion. I want to, yeah.
You know, that's a great idea. The problem is that, you know, you spend so much time and, you know, educating these different department heads and, you know, sending them to school and paying for their schooling, and then all of a sudden they get a job offer from another community paying them the rate that they, you know, that they should be paying, and then they leave you for $5,000, $10,000 because it makes a real big difference for them because, as we all know, $5,000, $10,000 makes a difference to anyone's salary. So, you know, that's a risk you run. I mean, you can risk losing good people.
But
you know, for instance, my chief of staff had a job offer, and I saw her offer letter from another company was more than I was paying her. You know, Jamie Erickson, he had a job offer from another company, and was actually for him was closer to his home, so he actually weighed the commute, and he really wanted to stay, but he took it because it was $110,000. So
Yeah, but you could have came to us if you wanted more and said, you know, we're
so
gonna
I'm just
lose
trying.
this
So
good
rather than
person.
doing that, I want to do like truth in budgeting. What we did was we just got the position, whatever it was, city, let's say, you know, city, I don't know, ISD inspector, ISD director. We just took the 10 communities, we took all the ones that are near us, you know, and pretty much they're all similar in population, and we just grabbed the high, low, and then we tried to middle the number. So if they stayed, and you know, every year we give them a percentage increase, so you know they'd work to that maximum number. I don't think many of them went to the maximum number. Some of them might have, but there is still some wiggle room. A lot of different positions where they weren't at the maximum, even though you know someone might have been here for now, you know, 10, 15 years. So you know when you look at the budget in the whole, the salary increases are really minimal compared to the budget itself. I mean, that's not, you know, great explanation, but we're talking, you know, really small amounts of dollars But I understand, you know, I mean,
we
Councilman
also have the
Napolitano and I had
complaints
this
of the- yeah.
conversation, you know, Councilman Napolitano and I had this conversation regarding, you know, the medium income in the city of Everett is, and, you know, a lot of people, their medium income is low, you know, and, but you want your, you know, I think your people in positions in City Hall and in policing and fire or whatever, to be people who are held to a higher standard, you know, being, you know, accurately or appropriately paid based upon their education and so forth, and you want the most qualified. I think the history of the city of Everett and all politics, maybe a lot of places, where all people who are working for mayors were, you know, prior to, you know, not speaking about myself and John, but prior to that, and maybe even before even David, but prior to that was most people were political hires. You know, the personnel director was the mayor's best friend. You know, the city solicitor was the mayor's best friend. You know, so, and maybe some of them weren't as competent. You know, I try to, you know, not do that and try to go out and hire, you know, most competent. Granted, I was lucky to have Melissa the most competent because, you know, knowing her my whole life, but she has that background and expertise. Rich Viscate, never knew who he was. You know, he applied for the position. I mean, Larry DeCosta was awesome. He was a great auditor, but he's not Rich Viscate. You know,
Thank
so.
God we couldn't take two of him.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, he's very difficult to deal with, let me tell you. But he's right, you know, when it comes to contracts and bidding and all that stuff and funds, he does a good job. You know, he makes sure that it's done correctly, so, you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just trying to hire the best, and, you know, so when you post a job, you want to make sure that you can hire the best, you know, best person. And, you know, for most, you know, that's true with most of the positions. I mean, you would look at Director of Public Works, yeah, has Jerry Navarro been my friend my whole life? Absolutely. But, you know, when I had him interviewed, he interviewed in a panel of 4 people and 3 other DPW directors, and I had 2 DPW directors applying for that job. The 3 DPW directors and the other person rated him over the other ones. And they may, and some of them, you know, maybe had a little more education, but then, you know, what Jerry outscored him was passion for the city, getting the job done, being available, you know, I mean, you know, so, I mean, you should look, you know, I could provide you with that too, or we can sit down and look at it and talk about it, but, I mean, sometimes people that you do know will be awarded the position, but that's what the position pays, that's what positions pay, you know, all in communities around here. Just like you, I think, you know, I think you did yourselves injustice by not paying yourself an appropriate amount of money. I think we are erred when it came to the mayor's salary, not my salary, the mayor's salary. You know, to get the most competent, qualified person, you should make sure we pay it right. We're going to be a changing community. I think all of you know it. The city's going to change for the better. Maybe not, you know, maybe the whole 12 of us, me included, might not be here in the next 5, 10, 8 years, whatever it is, might be a whole different branch. But this city is going to change, and you should make sure we have the right people, making sure the finances and the planning. It's all about planning and financing. That's what it comes down to. Planning, financing, and get it put it into place, you know.
I do have a few questions in regards to the overall budget, and.
For the mayor?
Well, for Mr. Biscay.
Okay.
I believe he would be the
Good, yep.
one to answer this. Rich, in regards to this overall budget, obviously budgets are made with new growth coming in, whatever the expenditures are. Now, did you, by any chance, I know what the answer is, but I need the viewing audience to understand this. Is this budget at all based on the new casino coming in? Can we afford this budget without the new casino coming in? It's not based on a new casino, right?
The only revenues that are contemplated with regard to this budget, with regard to the casino, is the anticipation that we will get reimbursed for the cost of the budget for the Office of Gaming and Accountability.
Right.
No.
That's the only thing in this book that.
That's the only
based
revenue
on-
that's estimated with regard to that. No community enhancement fee, no capital improvement fund, nothing. Just the equal amount of the Office of Gaming budget, I've estimated as a miscellaneous non-recurring receipt.
Okay, and the other thing is, based on a new growth, because there's been talk about the mayor hotel coming in, that is also not based on this budget?
New growth it usually has a 12-month lag, so any new hotels, developments that are coming in, you usually don't pick those up until the following year.
The
So
following year.
our new growth is based upon what
What we
we're
already
estimating was from the last year that ended
Right.
December 31st.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counsel McKinnon.
I just want to make a statement on the information that we received tonight. We received an abundant amount of information that we requested. We received it tonight, so I wanted to see how the council would feel on being able to absorb that information and then possibly going into another session. So that would be the statement that I'm looking for now, because we just got these a couple minutes ago. We got all this
Yeah,
right
it's-
when we
it's a
sat
lot.
down.
It's a
I
lot.
mean, there's a bunch of information that we received, and I'm grateful that they actually came and they brought it all to us, but I'd like to have some time, and I think, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but I think that they would need time to actually take a look at it to make, proper, suggestions or whatever
Why
to
don't-
this
why-
budget.
Yeah, why don't we hold on to that, and then if there are any other questions of our invited guests, we'll go from there, but we'll come back, when we're done with that, I'll come back to you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Sani.
Thank you. Mr. Viskey, with the budget as presented and also with the capital improvement, do we know an average what it would cost of an increase with the taxpayers, roughly? I know you can't give a definite or just like an estimate. Is it $200, $400 for an average home that would be going up?
The average home is tough to predict. Right now, it's at 5%. So for anyone at home thinking about it, it would potentially be a 5% increase to their last year tax bill, because the Department of Revenue doesn't even do an average single-family value for the city of Everett, because we have a two-tier system. We have a 20% residential exemption, so you actually have two types of single families valued. So if you actually go on the website and you try to figure out the average single family of the city of Everett, it doesn't exist, just like Cambridge, just like Somerville. They don't list them. So again, a condominium versus a single family versus a multifamily, it's really tough to say what the impact is. Some of these properties are actually increasing in value much quicker than others. The multifamily market in the city is really exploding now, so those values could see higher increases, and condominiums at a stable rate may see no increase. But overall, it's about 5%, and I don't know if that helps you, but that's the
5%
best I
on
can
the-
do.
5% on the value
Probably
maybe
5% increase on your tax bill.
on the tax bill for the value.
So maybe about $150 if it's a $3,000 bill, let's
Right.
say.
I mean, I always thought when I was in office that the number was, for every $1 million more the levy went up, was about 25 cents on the tax rate.
This way with the average,
And it kinda, and I think it kinda works out, right? Is that be appropriate to say?
Yeah, that's a rule of thumb that works sometimes. The residential exemption really throws a wrench in given those average single-family values, especially even for condominiums. Like I said, that first $80,000. If your condo's only worth $140,000 and you're getting $80,000 credit, you're paying tax on $60,000. So
I think we have some condos that we actually write them a check every year.
I don't think we write them a check, but they may pay nothing.
I
It's
don't know how that happened, but.
We have to probably look into that.
Right.
But,
I know last year, I believe some of the taxes went down on some of the homes, because I know talking to a few people, they said the taxes went down, so they would end up coming back up and being leveled probably on certain homes, and maybe a little bit more.
This is just another,
What
just
they-
another thought is that this is a revaluation year for the city of Everett, through the Department of Revenue. Every 3 years, they come in and do a total revaluation, so in some instances, on comparable sales and such, if you have a lot of commercial properties, really moving because of the development and the prospecting of the values, you may see a lot of the values be burdened by commercial industrial property, but the multifamilies as well are really spiking up. So I think that this particular year, you might see a lot more variation depending on what type of house you have, depending on what size lot you have, depending on if you got a mixed use or residential, commercial. It's just a little too early to tell, but the overall, I'd say the rule of thumb is probably about 5% you'd see for this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Counselor Del Solo.
Counselor Sani, that was part of my question, but the other half may be, just so that people at home know, What was last year's budget in this year's budget before we do any cuts?
Stripping out some of the miscellaneous charges and chargebacks, just the appropriations that you're contemplating tonight, $154,363,000 in fiscal year 15, $162,794 in fiscal year 16, and that's a 5% difference. So there's where my 5% number comes from.
Okay. I just want the people at home, I mean, they hear 5% and.
Again, like, we're
54 million and 162 million.
What did I say, 1,000?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Million.
That's a big cut.
I'm glad you're the finance guy.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Don't take back your kind words.
Thank you. Still doing a good job.
Yeah, but, 2.5 of that is an increase in Chapter 70 money. So we assume that increase in Chapter 70, but it actually decreased, so the increase in the city, school budget went up by 2.5, but that was all grant money, basically all Chapter 70 money.
Yeah, and the new growth, we don't have new growth yet. We're estimating 1.4 million. If that comes in at $2 million, that's another 600,000 that goes away. So
Yeah.
I'm just going appropriation to appropriation. The mayor's correct, the state aid went up $3 million, so that hedges down this number, and there's other factors in the snow and ice deficit's gonna bring it up, so
Correct.
it's a little early to prospect until
And
what
we
it's
have
gonna
the
be.
ability before the year's over, if you want to make it a zero increase to anybody, we can do that too.
All right, thank you.
If we wanted to talk about that later on.
Thank you. He didn't like that one.
Council Sachetta.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make a statement regarding the taxes and whatever. We have had an increase in our water bills and our tax bills over the past 8 years. And now we're talking a higher income tax, a higher real estate tax. We know we're going to get a higher water bill. Why don't we talk about reducing the taxes and reducing the water bills for 1 year or 2 years? I mean, the fact of the matter is, we keep on hiring, we keep on increasing this and increasing that. We're looking to get the people to pay less money. We're getting all kinds of developments in this city. We've got that big development down on Broadway, Everett. We've got that big development down on Waters Avenue. We've got, well, I'm forgetting the casino, but we've got a number of different buildings that are going to come into effect. Let's reduce the tax for 1 year, for one term. Why increase it each and every year? Why increase the water every year? Let's find a way to decrease it. And that's the statement I have to make. Thank you.
Council Marchese?
Just to go off of Council Sachetta, I was always led to believe that we did the water, we reduced the water bill somehow. We had the big commercial properties come online, that it would reduce it. Parking violations, I feared that revenue would be used to reduce the taxes. Code enforcement, I thought that the money from the code enforcement be used to reduce the taxes, but what it's actually created is larger government in all three of those divisions, between the water and everything, and it's like, I agree, I'd like to see 1 year, just see us just go, not spend, not hire, and see something like that happen. I mean, I don't want to make a big issue out of certain things, but when I'm looking at a salary increase, and I'm not going to blame anybody, but, a small thing, like we had a library. It was closed down, but we still had the same salary. It's not a big thing, but, do we really need the part-time workers? If we had one library and all the full-time workers are working in one place, do you need, just little things that, they go by the wayside and they shouldn't be. And that's what, I thought we created some of these things to help reduce the taxes. Of course, they're improving the quality of life in the city of Everett, which I don't have a problem with, but, I mean, do we need 10 people checking garbage barrels all the time? I don't know. I mean, do we need 20 people putting tickets? I don't know. I'm just getting to the point. Government's getting too big. I've been here 20 years. I've never seen it this big, and it's just kind of overwhelming to see the amount of people and the amount of salaries. And, it's something we should look into. And, I'm not, here to pick a fight. I'm just giving my overall view of what I see as a lot of overspending in government. And I too would like to see the people get a break for a year and just see, let's stop the spending. Let's use the money we have to reduce the, I'm sure if we reduce half the people that we have open positions, leave them open for a year or two. Do we have to create new positions? Come up with $1 million or $2 million in new positions. There's no health insurance involved in, there's a lot more that goes along than salary. And let's, see if we give the people a little bit of a break. Even break even, right at this point, is good.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to respond to either one?
Sure,
of the
thank you.
questions?
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, we haven't certified what our free cash number will be, but I'm sure free cash this year, because I know we didn't spend our entire $162 million budget. I'm sure there's probably, I would say, we probably definitely underestimated some revenues like new growth. We probably definitely underestimated revenues coming in from code enforcement fines, and we probably have an excess of revenues. I just want to, the money that comes in from code enforcement, we have a revolving fund that we use for, housing homeless families and, people kind of down on their luck. We use some of that money in human services. So there's a good amount of money that comes in through that. So, I mean, they are generating probably more than they pay out in salaries. And same with parking. I'm pretty sure we generate more money in parking receipts than we do in salaries, but we do use that to offset, as you know. So I know there's two of the departments you spoke about. I don't know what the third one is. But we can use all the free cash if you'd like to offset the budget. It just creates a hole, but I mean, you can. I mean, this is the budget approved by you. I will submit that order if you'd like. I know we definitely have raised more than we anticipated, just through code enforcement fines, parking fines, new growth numbers, being underestimated. I have no problem doing that. I really don't. I know, I see the future of the city regarding the power plant. I mean, that TIF is in serious question. We're going to see, the attorneys I have working on it are telling me that they're going to come up with some sort of agreement soon. And, when they told us they were going to invest $300 million and the total value was going to be $600 million, and today's valued at $1.2 billion, and they invested $800 million, their TIF is in serious question. That's going to be a lot of money coming back to the city eventually. That's one of the things I've been working on. I really haven't discussed with you. But we do have outside counsel representing us on that. And, face it, the casino is going to come. It's going to happen. There are hotels coming on board. There's, I think, one already in the planning stages, already being built. Another one going to be going for permits down on 16. So the new growth is definitely going to skyrocket. But I could make it a zero. We could make it a zero net increase if you'd like with this budget. I don't know if government has grown. Or we're just reallocating. I'd literally like to see the position, first position, how many more positions we have since I took office. I would definitely like to look at that. Have salaries grown in certain departments? Absolutely. I'm just trying to be competitive because I'm tired of losing good people. So salaries have definitely come higher. I mean, we were historically known to have lower values, and look what happened to Everett. We used to be number one in the GBL area of desirable cities to live in, and we became number 7. Not saying that anything to do with who we had working or what they were doing or what they weren't doing, but we haven't had a master plan done in the city of Everett since 1964 until I came into office. So we've had hotels built all around us and not in Everett. So that's something that can generate lots more money. So some of these people are integral. I don't really think I have anyone that doesn't deserve here. Could I cut the clerical staff down? I mean, could I cut 20 people down? I mean, I could. I mean, do you want to? I mean, I live in Everett, and they'll make, modest amount of money. I mean, could I, start laying police and firemen off? I guess I could. I really don't want to. But if you want to look at salaries in City Hall, if you want to just look at 20 employees that I gave raises to, that's a fraction of the cost. I mean, the 20 employees total, I think, maybe factor out to be $100,000. But I think this is healthy. It's up to you to do what you want to do. I think we have a great fiscal plan. Councilman Sachetta, I agree. Let's give some people some relief. I mean, that's my number one goal, is always to try to help people in the city, and I applaud you. Water and sewer. We used to pay for it. The water and sewer bill was lower, but we used to subsidize it with taxes, so no one really understood it. they think they're paying more, but actually they were paying, in general, they were actually paying through their tax bills because whatever our assessment from Mass Water, it still had to get paid. It's always the year before, so if it was a $16 million bill and everyone's water bill was $50, well, that 16 million was still raised, it was raised through your taxes. So this is just kind of truth in budgeting. We are doing a ton of more infrastructure improvements in water and sewer that we've never done. I mean, I think you guys see it on the streets. This infrastructure is antiquated. I mean, you have pipes that are 100 years old providing water to people's houses, lead pipes. That's one of my number one goals, is to get rid of all those pipes, get rid of the illicit discharges, money that we've been paying for that we weren't even using water, making sure people's power, people's not flooding any more of their properties, all that kind of stuff that we're doing. We get the culvert down. Anyways, I'm going off. But, it's your budget to cut and whatever, but I think this is we spent a lot of time. John, that's my 5 minutes is up. But I agree. I mean, hey, listen.
I have a couple other hands in the air. Questions for our guests? Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Viscay, whoever can answer this. How much do we have in the stabilization?
12 points.
Well, we have $11.5 million right now in stabilization.
I know it affects your bond rating and everything else, but, Mr. Mayor, and I do agree with you what you just stated about going forward. I think the city's going to be in a good place in terms of, what our revenues are coming in and so forth, and I think we're on very solid ground. But if I were to make a recommendation, say, to take $2 million out of the
Stabilization?
Yes, stabilization fund, would have stabilization fund. I mean, would that affect us tremendously on any bonds just for this year?
No, I don't think so. You create a hole like we always talked about, but you can do that because you know that in the next couple of years you're going to have more revenue coming in. I mean, we could, I know the CFO doesn't want to do that, but you could. I mean, I'd have to send the order down to you, but if you all want that to happen, we could send some relief down.
But I just look at it, like, do we cut salaries, do we cut positions, or do we take a little bit out of the stabilization fund? Again, I wouldn't be even recommending this if I thought that over the next few years there was going to be no growth in the city. But what I see going on, between these developments, the hotels and things like that, the power plant, and in a few years, as of right now, the schools possibly some of the schools coming offline and stuff like that. I mean, I think we're in a good situation going forward. That's why I would recommend something like that, to help the taxpayers.
I just to try to help explain where we are right now, we're about to spend $160-odd million for the fiscal year 16 that hasn't even begun yet. So while this is the budget process for fiscal year 16, cities and towns work differently. They're spending all the money before the year even starts. What we present to you with regard to revenue estimates and obviously expenditures, I mean, these are real once you vote them, but the new growth hasn't been certified yet. The free cash for next year hasn't been certified yet. The state aid hasn't even essentially been finalized yet. So really, this is a budget. I don't want to call it a fake budget, but this is our projected budget. We're going to have a much clearer picture come September, October, November when we get closer to setting the tax rate, and things could change significantly from them with regard to certifying free cash and how much that is, and what the desire is to use some of that to lower taxes, our parking receipts by November, December. We're going to have another 5 months worth of money in there. So while this budget is presented in a certain way, there's no guarantee it's going to look exactly like this, and I think that most everyone in this room feels that if we can do anything we could to bring down the effect and the impact on the taxpayers while we keep a balanced budget, I think that we collectively want to do that. So when we're talking about stabilization account, I would recommend probably using free cash before I'd use stabilization. But those strategies, I think we still have several months to develop and try to bring forward to you in September, October, November, some strategies so that we can stabilize these taxes even more. And I will just remind people, I know it's 2 years ago and people forgot, but we did have an $87 million budget, tax levy in fiscal year 13, and we brought that down $3 million to $84 million in 14. So there was the year that we lowered taxes by $3 million. I know it seems like a long time ago, but it was only 2 years ago. Only what happens is the next year, if we're not able to sustain that, it almost looks like your taxes doubled. But there are years that, well, at least since I've been here, the 3 years we've brought taxes down, but
I certainly understand that. I mean, I certainly would still be in favor of using something to reduce the taxes, but I also would look at, like, Mr. Mann, what you said earlier, when we had this discussion before. For instance, on the people get the rebate on their, living in the house and stuff, the homeowner exemption. I mean, we have to really seriously look at, if people with condos are paying, certain values are paying next to nothing, we have to really look, because that could be all lost revenue now that could be offsetting, that we could be going towards lowering the taxes, and we don't have that revenue now, because if someone's paying peanuts for taxes when they really shouldn't, we have to really look at that.
in that case, the revenue's not lost, it's just redistributed to the non-owner occupied. It's basically a discount given to owner-occupied residential properties, so you don't lose any money, it's just...
Someone else making up more.
So it's getting made up, so it's not just a discount that's not offset by an increase. So there's basically a shift in the residential taxes. You'd have two classes. You'd have the owner-occupied residential and non-owner-occupied residential, and the sum of those two equal the same amount as if you didn't have it at all. So
Okay.
just to make sure people understand that at
And this may be
home.
off just a little bit subject, Mr. President, but, Mr. Viskey, in terms of like, now as a condo, I know it really doesn't happen if you have a multiple-family home, but let's say I have a condo, let's say it's at Park Plaza, and I sublease it to Rich Delasola. Okay, Rich is renting it out for $1,400 a month. Does that person still get the residential exemption?
Well, they're not supposed to. I mean, if they lie and we don't catch them, but, I mean, they sign papers on the, pains and perjury, so you're not supposed to misrepresent your primary residence with the chief assessor, so.
All right. No, thank you for that.
I wouldn't rent to Rich Delasola either, though.
I was just saying that, wait a minute.
Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for commenting on our previous conversations about the median income in the city. Too many people in our city are on a fixed income. And, though I agree with the sentiments of Councilor Sachetta and Councilor Marchese, that, our residents are looking for some relief. We are in a growth process. We are in a situation where the city of Everett, you're right, is going to look entirely different 10 years from now than it does right now. We're moving out from a blue-collar, low-income city to where we have the opportunities to develop and attract other businesses. But right now, our residents could use a break. And I think once we've certified free cash, if you've got a commitment this year to try to, level off the taxes for our residents, I think that would go a long way in getting us better braced for the future. I know you've got plans for other developments, other programs. We had this conversation about the CIP, and I'm very interested in these programs. But I also do a lot of reading, a lot of financial reading, and I'm concerned about what a lot of financial forecasters are saying about the potential of where we're going with situations where the last thing I want to see is cuts in police and fire, especially given recent history. Talks about attacks on police. I mean, at some point we're going to definitely be looking at increasing those. So I think these are all, we're moving in the right direction, and I think that we are moving cautiously, but we are moving in the right direction. So I think that would go a long way this year. If the public perception, and perception isn't always true, but the perception is that we spend it as soon as we get it. I think if we have the opportunity to give people a breather, even if it's just 1 year, it goes a long way to help them get back on their feet.
I agree.
All right.
Yeah, I would, when free cash is certified, maybe I'll have a conversation with your president, and maybe he can have a conversation with you individually, and we can maybe decide on a certain number. I have no problem doing something like that.
Any other questions? I have to apologize. Councilor Delasola, have you spoken yet on this piece? I did not think so. You're next.
I was too amazed at my condo. I just echoing the words of my colleagues of the free cash. If it was a $4 million difference on the budget, if we took it out of the free cash, give everybody a break. I know we have money coming in next year or the year after. Once it starts rolling in, and then we could, it just helps us so much better. But it's always, we're waiting for this, we're waiting for that. The casino, I can't wait to see a bucket go on the ground, and I feel a lot better. So just echoing the same
am I.
words of my colleagues of, what's going on. The future does look bright in Everett, but we're still waiting to jump in the water with all the money coming into
Yeah,
us
yeah,
here.
right. No, I agree. We're, you know, we're getting close. I mean, but I feel, yeah, I agree also.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Council DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I agree with everybody, but I don't agree on taking money out of the stabilization fund to lower the taxes. I never have, and I
I think
never will.
we said free cash. I think
Free cash,
Free
okay.
cash.
Because
You
I know
gotta
that.
You gotta also remember, I'm sorry, Council DeFlorio, but we used to use free cash to do projects. Now, today, we don't. We use actually, so we do it through the capital improvement plan, you know, so, whereas now, we incur that debt in our budget, so using that free cash to offset some of that, I think, would be, you know.
But I know the auditor at
good.
one point had said he wants 15% of the free cash to go into the stabilization fund.
Well,
Is-
we have we have financial policies on free cash that say that the first 50% go into reserve accounts. I mean, those policies are set to try to stabilize and give us a nice rainy day fund, and any surprises unforeseen that come up, we have the ability. I mean, this snowstorm in particular for this year, I mean, we're projecting that we have to raise probably over $1 million to balance the budget. However, if we use some of our reserves to pay that down, that's $1 million we don't have to raise. That might be $1 million less than taxes. So I'm just trying to let people know that we're obligated to come out here and present the balanced budget based upon assumptions of revenues. And those revenues may change, and they will change as we get more information when the year end closes, when free cash certified, when our new growth is done. And we certainly don't want the tax levy to increase. And it's my expectation that will decrease, and based upon some of the conversation I'm hearing tonight, maybe there's a change in the philosophy on how we use that free cash to try to present that relief. These policies aren't etched in stone. They're what we believe are sound financial policies. However, we're all aware that it's it's tough. It's still a working class community, and we're definitely aware on this side of the table on the effects of that. And we certainly try to balance the services and the staffing levels of police and fire and the school department with how much burden that the taxpayers can have versus how much we can use in other methods. And, the state's funding us, and if they cut back, we have to be ready for that too. So it's a fluid situation, and what you have right now is just a snapshot of what we believe it'll look like. But I believe it'll change once we get close to the end of the calendar year.
Okay, my question to you is, based on last year's budget, how much did we have to raise? Because we don't have to raise the whole 162 million. So
No, that's a total. The tax levy.
what's the difference between how much we
tax-
have to raise
about-
between
about-
last year's budget and this year's
About
budget?
$4.5 million.
So $4.5 million.
Right.
So that.
It was
the
not-
the taxes is based on that.
That's the tax levy. So
The tax levy would be based, if it's gonna go up on anything, it would be based on that $4.5 million.
That's
Is that
correct.
So basically, I ask this all the time, and I know it's hard to answer, but based on that $4.5 million, if we were to keep this budget, if we were to have to raise this money, based on this budget going up to that $4.5 million, what would the taxes go up to, approximately?
Well, that's what I was explaining to Council Sani. I'm saying 5% increase, probably more like 4.5%, but again, what that means for your home versus a condo versus a multifamily, it's very hard to tell, but
No, I understand that, because everybody's value is different. I'm not, and it's hard to say what an average single-family house is.
I think
worth,
someone
because we
sitting,
really don't have any
if
average.
someone sitting at home is listening and their tax bill is $4,000, they can add 4.5% to that and assume it's gonna be around there, but their property value may be flat for fiscal year 16, where others go up. I mean, it's based on comparable sales and the data that the DOR collects, and neighborhoods and square footage of your property and how many floors you have, how many bathrooms you have. It's
Rose, to answer your question, probably
But-
$20 or $30 a month.
Okay, but the point is, if,
It's about three, yeah, it's about.
if we turn around and we
It's
set
about
the
a dollar,
tax
it's about
rate.
a dollar and 1,000. If your house is worth $300,000, it's about $300 increase. It's usually a quarter for every million.
Okay.
The budget
If-
goes up.
If we turn around and pass this budget the way it is, in September, October, we know what the values of the house is gonna be, we know what the value of the property is gonna be, and we know what the tax rate is gonna be set at. So if we discover at that point that the tax rate is gonna be too high and people's tax is gonna go up $200-300, we can take money out of free cash to offset it. Is that?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
what I'm getting to.
Yes.
So the only thing is, I don't like to get in the habit of doing that, because every time we've done that, taxes go down $300-400, then the following year, we don't have the money, it goes up $700-800. So unless I won't make that decision again, I have no problem saying no to it, unless I know at that point how much growth is coming in to offset that money that we put for the following year.
We could definitely, once September, October comes, we should have the growth number, we should have our free cash number, and then we can give a better depiction. We'll just update that PowerPoint, I can give you updated numbers, and we'll be able to hone in. And at that point, quite frankly, I'll be able to have the numbers into the Department of Revenue software, the gateway system, and actually spit out real numbers that you can have.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel McKinney.
I almost forgot my question, thanks. Was, to the mayor, I know that we've done this in the past, we've actually put this towards the tax base before, and we've actually showed some type of relief, I know that. What I would like to know is, I mean, and I want to say that we do need to show the citizens that we're going to actually be looking out for their dollars as well. And saying that, we should probably get some type of fiscal study on the impact this is going to do to us within the city before we actually look at entertaining a thought like that. I know that we've done this.
The free cash transfer you're talking about?
Free cash or stabilization fund. If we're not going to go through the stabilization fund, that's fine. But if we're going to go through the stabilization fund, we should know how it's going to impact us bond-wise, it's going to impact us rating-wise or whatever as a city. Correct?
Yeah, so I think I think the best route to go, and listening to the CFO, would be to use the free cash. That way, it wouldn't really affect your bond rating. Might change some of our, fiscal procedures we set up by putting X amount of dollars in certain funds. But, not to be a dead horse, but the power plant does come back regardless in full valuation in 3 years. If you want it for the next 3 years to use free cash also the budget, you're going to go from $15 million a year to I think it's 25.
But what we don't want to see is, we don't want to see police, fire, any services reduced. Reason being is because.
Well,
I
increased it by
Mr. Mayor, I
2.2
know
million.
in the past, we've actually, we've tapped into free cash before.
To
and
offset-
actually to offset
layoffs.
layoffs.
Layoffs for
That we're
fire.
going to- Yeah,
You're
that's
right.
right. I was
Yeah.
around for that. So I remember doing that, and I feel that that's something that we
Just-
have to look at that.
Right.
And if we
We
don't.
should ask those 9 firemen if they remember. I don't know.
Well, they might, but you know what? I'm glad that we have those 9 firemen now. Because look at the city right now. We need
Absolutely.
as many fire and as many police as we could possibly get right now.
Just to one point while you're talking about public safety is, one of the reasons why you're seeing potential $4.5 million increase in taxes, that we had 13 police and fire being paid from grant accounts from back when they had the ARA funds, and those have expired as of May 31st. So you have a choice. You can get rid of 13 public safety officials, or you can absorb them into the budget. We've absorbed them into the budget. Not only do we have to pick up the salary portion of that, we have to pick up all their fringe benefits, their health insurance, their retirement, et cetera. So some of this stuff is driven by no cause of ours. It was great to have grants and pay for those public safety officials for a while, but now you're stuck. What do you do? Do you keep them or do you get rid of them? Now I know that everybody believes we should have more police and fire inadequate, and we decided to keep them. So when you look at the public safety budget from last year to this year, that's driving it. That's a huge thing, and that's not we won't call it an unfunded mandate, but it's kind of beyond our control. So there are certain things, pension assessment, stuff like that, the health insurance trends going up. So some of the stuff is just the way it goes, and trust me, I do this, and I have a lot of friends that do this work in all the communities, and there's really nobody where taxes are going down. It's just a matter of how to control them from going up, and I think we're, between the networking that we do up here, we're listening to all the communities and what they're doing to try to keep costs down, and we're all trying to emulate each other and stabilize the taxes for everybody.
Thank you for that. I'd like to see an impact study on that, if we could have that. I mean, just so that we know what we're dealing with. So if we do in fact decide to take $2 million and shift it to, residential, commercial, whatever it would be, we know what we're getting for our dollars. And also, I mean, we've done this before, and the mayor was there doing it, so that would be a great source of the study as well. So if we can get both of them to come in and just give us something on paper so that we would know, that would be a great thing.
Excellent point, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to the mayor. Everybody's talking about using the free cash here, you know. I think going the wrong direction with this free cash. I think the cuts are in this book here, so let's make the cuts out of the book, and let's keep free cash as the people's money, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You are.
Counselor Marchese.
You know, a couple of things I proposed about when the casino came on, the 3 years prior, that 90% of the money be given back to the people on taxes. But it wasn't necessarily going all back to the people on taxes to reduce theirs. So that it seems like our proximity to Boston, I mean, you know, for the future of the commercial aspect of it, if we could get that higher number down to the mid-30s, and that's always been a concern of mine. I mean, you know, to me, because I just think the city's ready to roar, and I think, you know, you get $4 or $5 off that commercial rate, and we bring it down, we're $5 or $6 away from our surrounding areas, that'll happen here. And by doing that, that'll also fuel the rest of the taxes and bring down the other part of the taxes down.
I think if you do look at the trend over the last 3 years, when I started, I believe we were 42.95. We're under 30. I mean, we're under 40 now. We're at 39.45, and part of that is the commercial valuations coming up. So
Well,
maybe that,
we're still substantially higher than our.
absolutely.
You've done a nice job chipping away.
we're on the right track.
But I want to see it down. I want to see it down. I want to see everything start coming over here that we're losing to Somerville and Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea's on, you know, Chelsea's on fire. I shouldn't use that. But it's very busy here. I mean, we're getting our projects here, but I want to see more projects come here. And I want to see them come being expedited. I don't want to wait to say, okay, casinos here built in 5 years, and then it branches off over that. I want to see something come here substantial other than the casino.
Well, to go back what the mayor was saying, I mean, one of the first things we were looking at when we came in is that high commercial rate and the effect the power plant agreement had on that. And we haven't been too vocal on what we've been doing, but behind the scenes, we are actively trying to get them to pay what they're supposed to be paying, and that would be a substantial change in the rate if we can actually get them to where they should be based upon the work they did versus what they said they were going to do.
And, you know, when you propose those expenditures about, think about developing this, fixing this over, it just seemed that until we see a shovel in the ground there, we have like a 2-year hole. Let's maximize what we can do ourselves before we actually see the extra funds coming. And then if you're going to, develop an infrastructure improvements, then that money will be adequate for it. But I mean, I'd love to see us down to 34, 35, only $5 or $6 off, and we have a great location here in the city.
Yep. No, we agree. And I think Rich touched upon it, but, when we back in the value of the power plant, and I know Pam could probably do it better than I can, but when you back in the value of the power plant, you're back in $1.2 billion rather than, 486? What's the power plant value now? Yeah. Right now, it's $364 million.
Is that both of them?
Total, $364 million. When you back in $1.2 billion in 3 years from now, that's going to substantially drop that rate.
No, just one more
Huge.
question.
And it's going to happen.
Now, the power plant, there's no way that they would ever shut down half of it and just go to the new one?
Well, it's actually getting cheaper now to, back and forth, right? The gas oil game.
Yep.
So they have both of them. 2 years ago, you would say, yes, they'd be better off operating off of LNG, but now with the price of oil going down to, I don't know, it's $40 a barrel. I don't know what the last number was. They plan on operating, when I hear all of them. We hear that they're going to decommission the original part, but then I hear recently that they're not. But at the end of the day, their value of their property
that'll be a
still,
better Winfield.
their value is still going to be $1.2 billion. They can fight all they want, go to ATB. No one's going to be selling.
So just the when it comes online, and they come online substantially, it should be lower.
Yeah.
Substantially.
I don't want to make a promise.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, I believe, substantially lower.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. Mag, this question's actually come in a little late now after previous discussions. I mean, I realize that some of my colleagues want to really try to pin the tax rate down and how much it's going to be. But there's a reason why we don't set the tax rate the day after we fix the budget.
Correct. Right.
Mr. Skate, could you just give us an explanation as to why we're not able to do that, and how long, and when we would normally set the tax rate? This is more for the public.
Sure, the tax rate, we're a quarterly billing community, and the tax rate has to be set prior to the third quarter actual tax bill that goes out before January 1st. So the tax rate will have to be set by December 31st. Now, the main reason why we can't set that is we are getting all of the values of our properties, and we're at the mercy of the Department of Revenue, especially when we're in a revalue. Yeah, they get a little more involved with what our values are. So first thing we need to do is get our valuation certified by the Department of Revenue and get our new growth certified. And once that new growth is certified, pretty much everything can fall into place there. We're looking at late summer certification. We did adopt a law here that pushed us back 6 months. We were up at levy ceiling for a while, so we were actually losing our new growth because we were at the levy ceiling. So we made an adjustment, and our new growth should be certified earlier than in the past, and I'll be able to come back before you earlier with a tax rate. The second thing is we have to close the books. We have to submit our balance sheet to the Department of Revenue for our free cash certification. Now, if we're contemplating using free cash, we have to wait for it to be certified by the Department of Revenue before we can come before you for appropriation from that. So that part of the equation happens after the summer as well. And then finally, it happens a little earlier, but we still don't have final state aid numbers yet. Those state aid numbers are still being hashed out at the House and Senate. Now, we have pretty close predictions of what they are, but with the new governor here, some of those numbers haven't been finalized either. So some of that stuff doesn't happen. Like I explained earlier, we're in a position where cities and towns, we spend all our money before we have one nickel in the door. So it's a bit of, I mean, I call it the fake budget. The real budget is when we certify the tax rate, because that's what you can look at. That's in the DOR's website. You can pull it up. You can see the recap. You can see all the figures, and that's the true budget. What we're doing here is anticipating what we will have for revenues, so that we can justify the expenditures and the appropriations made by this body. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, and that's the reason why asking them what the tax rate's going to be isn't a real question. There are too many variables. A commitment is to maintain a level tax rate at this stage. I think is a strong enough commitment as it is. Trying to nail it, nickel and dime it down to the minutia is just not possible. There's too many variables, and too many other things can occur. There could be a reduction in state aid. Could be an increase.
Well, it could be. I mean, there could be 9C cuts that happens as well, and those have to be adjusted. So there's a multiple things that can happen. And by coming up before you last month with the PowerPoint presentation and how the charter reads the annual budget policy, that's where we look at the trends that we've had in the past years and try to predict the future. And we always try to be modest in our revenue growth, because if I come before you with revenue anticipation numbers that are largely inflated, then when I go to really set the tax rate with the DOR, they're not, if I collect 8 million in local receipts and I say I'm going to get 11, that might be fine in front of everybody, it looks great, but once they look at it and say, how are you justifying $11 million of local receipts? You only get 8 million this year, 8 million last year. They don't certify it, so then you got to lower it down, then the taxes go up. So we always try to conservatively budget our revenues. We give realistic expenditures. We come up with a figure. We back out local aid. We back out the MSBA money. We back out local receipts. And that's essentially a levy. And that's what we try to portray early on in May. Set the budget based on that, but then September, October is when the rubber really hit the road, and we'll know exactly where we stand.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the public, because we do this every year, and we know that when we leave here after we approve a budget, any budget, it's still months before it turns into a tax rate. Correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you touched on the power plant. I mean, I think that's certainly a big thing, especially with the numbers that Ms. Davis just mentioned, and then the big difference there. So there could be a big possible windfall there. I know it's possibly still in litigation, this particular situation. Would it be all right at some point, maybe in the next couple of weeks, either a regular council meeting or maybe even a committee of the whole, to at least to come, maybe get into it a little bit more? Would we be able to do that, or are we just so far in case that we can't touch it at all? They're really expounding on it and really getting some more information for the public, because I find this fascinating that that was that big a difference in revenue that possibly, assessed value of this property.
I'm sure we can definitely do something in the executive session. Or we actually, could come to you for a possible vote, right? Decertification, right? I don't know if I want to say that right now. I'd rather tell them the background. Yeah, I'd rather go into executive session. If we could come down to you in 2 weeks and go into executive session.
Yeah.
There are a few things that you can do as a body, and then I could bring in the attorneys that are working on it, and you can definitely ask them all the questions, and we can lay out all the.
I'd like to do that. That's great, and like I said, especially if at least we can at least get an idea of what's going on. Certainly,
We're hoping to come to agreement this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with them, and able to soften their blow on their tax increases come 2020. And then hopefully that revenue number, let's say it's an additional $5-7 million a year for us. That could go to,
Whatever.
yeah, back to stabilization, free
Yeah.
cash.
Commercial. Thank you.
Any other questions, if I guess? Councilman Marchese.
Mr. Fiscay, could you cut 1% out of this budget? Could you cut 1% out of this total budget?
That's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it?
No, I'm just curious, it'd be.
1% of the levy, 1% of the 170.
1%.
The one, what is it, 170?
$1.7 million?
Could I cut 1.7 million?
1.7 million is 170, right?
Yeah, 1.7, yeah.
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, you can cut as much as you like, but what the consequence
What do
of
you-
that
what do you-
is, I mean,
Without consequences, that's what I'm saying.
What do you have in your overlay?
I mean, yeah, I suppose the answer is yes. All right, get rid of 25 police and firefighters.
That's not what it's gonna go, I mean,
No, but I could.
That's playing that 20-year-old game we've been listening to. Every time once we got all the firefighters on this, 1% off your salary.
I could cut 10% from this budget if I want. At what cost, though?
At a cost of 10%. 1% wouldn't be a cost, it would be,
I'm here to defend the budget, councilors.
I know.
You're
We'll speak-
the appropriating authority.
we'll speak later.
All right,
Thank you.
gentlemen. Council McKinnon.
Could we excuse the customary thanks?
Are there any other questions for our guests? Seeing none, excuse customary thank. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Rich and Melissa, thank you very much for all of the time and effort throughout the entire proceedings. So,
Mr.
thank
President,
you.
while they're there,
Well, you were here tonight in the first night.
Mr. President, while they're still here,
Yeah.
if we can just, get that impact study of what that would do for the 2 million?
Sure.
Thank you.
If we could get that, that would be great.
I can do that internally for you. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So now, on the floor, Council McKinnon, you were starting to say something, and then we
I think
switch over to
that
questions.
we would need more time to digest the information that we received tonight. We received a boatload, I believe, tonight, and I thank them for actually giving it to us. So if we could
Hold this over to another committee as a whole.
What the clerk has told me, given everything that we have going on, we already have something lined up for the 15th. We could, and Rich, if you could hold on for 1 second, because I have a quick question for you. The first available date that we have would be June 16th. That's a Tuesday, I believe. If we had a committee of the whole on June 16th and we're able to fully discuss what to do with the budget and things of that nature, and then we would be able to refer that over to our meeting on the 22nd, does that give you enough time to do what you have to do? Does that cause any issues at all? from
No, I
timeframe?
mean, to be honest, I anticipated that this budget would be voted on the 22nd because it was typically the second or the fourth Thursday of the
Okay.
month
Could
of
make
June.
that the 15th.
There's already something on the 15th.
So, I mean, you can act upon it on the 8th, or you can act upon it on the 22nd. At this point, the ball's in your court. We've done all the work, we've given it to you, and it's your, we
Okay.
propose and you dispose, and I'll be available at both meetings. I won't be available after the 24th, I'm going away, but I'm sure you don't need me if it had to be here, but I would like to be here either on the 8th or the 22nd when you
Sure.
contemplate it.
So if we did do this on the 16th, and then are you around on the 16th or no?
Oh, I'll be around.
Okay, so you're on the 16th. for if we did end up doing the committee of the whole on that evening, and then referring it to our council meeting on the 22nd. I just wanted to be clear that we're not doing anything on our end that's going to impact you with what you have to do. That's fine, the 22nd would be fine if we were to act on it?
Yeah, the 22nd's fine.
Okay, all right.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I don't
Councilor
mean to
Florio.
interrupt, but in regards to the 16th, I already see 3 people saying they can't be here.
Who's that? Okay, well, when we'll figure out a date that works, that's prior to our 22nd meeting, so that we can make whatever recommendation to the 22nd. Knowing that that doesn't impact, thank you very much. Rich, you're free to go. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Extend thanks to the department heads that showed
Yeah,
up tonight.
all the department heads who came this evening as well, thank you very much for being here. So we're all set here. Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. After we review this, certainly out of respect, not only they're up here tonight, at some other point, if somebody's is interested in making a cut, I mean, let's say it's for instance, the treasurer's office or the auditor's office, I mean, I think we have to give them the courtesy of making sure that they know they have to come, I mean, especially if they want to come up and fight for
Sure.
something like that, we want to make sure that they're also going to be available
Yeah.
too, and they're not told at the last second that,
Sure.
tomorrow we're going to be doing cuts or whatever, and next thing you know, that we're cutting
Yeah.
money out of their budget. So I just want to make sure that, they're all kept in the loop as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I think whatever we end up deciding internally for the date, we'll talk with our clerk, and we'll do it here before we leave this evening. And that way we can pick a date, and then we can make sure that all department heads will know what that date is. And if they can come or send someone on their behalf and go from there. Absolutely, Counselor. Counselor Sani.
We'll talk in the back.
Why are they
We'll get
department
a
heads
date
here
on the
now?
back.
Why can't we go through this book? We all
Well-
sat here, we all had the
Yeah.
books for a while.
Yep.
I think we can go,
And that's
the
up to-
material
Yeah, that
is
is
really
totally, that's totally up to the council. The only thing that was brought up is with that study that we've heard so much about, we just got all of the nuts and bolts of that just now. And there are quite a few positions that are impacted by that.
even if we give 15 minutes to review, it's not a hard, I looked at it while I was
That-
sitting here.
It's up
not
to the
hard
body.
to
It's
absorb.
up to the body. Whatever the body wants to, they can do. I personally would prefer to have time to digest all of this, as long as we can get a date that works for everybody prior to our 22nd meeting. And then at the meeting of the whole, we'll invite up every department head who wants to be here, and we'll go department by department, go right through the book, and then we'll be able to make a recommendation for our 22nd meeting. But it's up to the body, as always, it's up to the majority of the body, whatever you folks want to do. So I guess the chair will accept the motion that
Motion,
we will
I
either...
already made a motion.
Yep, okay, so we've got a motion second to set up a committee of the whole prior to our June 22nd meeting to be able to go through everything and deal with it at that point. So I will ask what the position of the council is at this point. All in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Okay. I believe, the chair believes that it's in the affirmative. So if there's no question, absolutely. Let's have a roll call vote. If you're voting yes, you are voting to set up a committee of the whole to occur at some time before the 22nd. And then if that passes, we will set up a date right now. Clerk, call the roll.
Hey, Council Capone.
Yes.
I have Council Delasola.
No.
I have Council
Yes.
I have Council.
No.
I have Council Manning.
Yes.
I have Council Mike.
Yes.
I have Council McKinney.
Yes.
I have Council Politano.
Yes.
I have Council Stachana. Yes. I have Council.
No.
And Council Seminole.
Yes.
8 yeas, 3 nays.
8 yeas, 3 nays, the motion is passed. At this point, I would ask our clerk to, John, do you have the ability to give us a date right there? Do you have it?
Can we do it the 15th?
Yeah, okay, so 17th's out. The 15th, I think you said something is going on already?
Why can't we do it after Ways and Means at 6:30?
Can we do it after Ways and Means?
There's only a few things on the agenda on Ways and Means. The department heads are already here on
Okay,
Monday.
everybody, let's chill out, we're good. Let's,
Why don't we-
hold,
why don't
hold
we
on
get-
one second, let's see what the clerk, does the Ways and Means? Okay, so if the body is up to it, then we'll go, okay, okay. I think, Council Del Sol, you're the chairman of Ways and Means this year, correct? correct?
Yes, I am.
All right, and you're also an
6:30.
apartment renter for a condo? So, all right,
Don't tell,
so
don't tell my wife.
I don't, I don't think there's a lot on there. The only negative thing about that would be, the meeting starts at what time? 6? And it usually concludes by 6:30? About? The only downside to that is, well, I guess we're open, so department heads would be here anyway, correct?
What date is that?
It's a Monday. It'll be a week from Monday. So if that's the will of the body, we could meet on the 15th after the Ways and Means Committee. It's a Monday evening. Department heads would already be here.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that might work out. Does that work for everyone's schedule?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Chair will accept the motion to set up a committee of the whole for June 15th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and second to set up a committee of the whole for June 15th. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You have ruled. I guess at this point, the only thing left is to adjourn. Moved and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You have adjourned.
I'm gonna need a stroller to carry out.